The following program is brought to you by TZ Productions, offering 40 years of media experience.
The Alvin and Rosalie Sarachek Trust, supporting arts, history, science, and this program on KPTS.
This is where the personalities and power players come to share their stories. This week, we go one-on-one with a man for all seasons. Bob Scott is known by many for creating chamber music at the Barn. It's a series of classical music concerts that take place in rustic surroundings that enchant local audiences each summer. This 20-year tradition is a result of Scott's passion for music that developed at a very young age. He worked as a high school choral instructor and earned a master's degree in music. He started on a PhD, but then switched gears 54 years ago to become an insurance agent and to raise a family. In 1974, Scott started Prairie Pines Christmas Tree Farm, which hosts chamber music at the barn. And that's not all. There's so much more to talk about. It's the life and times of Bob Scott on this edition of One-on-One. Hello, I'm Victor Hogstrom, and thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure to introduce Bob Scott. Bob, thank you so much for being here.
Delighted to be here.
You've done so many things in your life. How do you trace your vast talents and interest of today back to your childhood days?
I think, number one, Victor, eat a lot of spinach and get to be an old man. And you have a lot of experiences and going back to a very young time. I had wonderful parents and grandparents, and that's it all because of that, where I am.
So you began life with music.
Yes.
How did that happen?
Actually, I was about 4 years old, as I recall, Victor, back in the plains of western Kansas in a little tiny area called Cyrus Community, and which is not in a city. But my father, at a Lyceum program, one time did a program where he played the guitar and I strolled around him, and I was the hero at 4 years old.
Okay.
And that's where it started.
So then you decided to go to college and study music.
My grandfather was a music teacher in the old churches, the old solfeggio system, up in little churches around the country. And so when I was 15, I was taught to use a tuning fork and became involved in music. And my whole family had been musical. And
to the point where you even taught music in high school?
I taught for about 5 years, yes. Had my master's in music from Wichita State, and a year towards my doctorate. And I taught, didn't think I wanted to do anything else until I was about 27 years old and got hungry.
So what changed? What caused that hunger?
The adoption of a young man, a boy that was three weeks old at the time, and we decided we needed to make a career change. And so I went to work for an insurance company with State Farm Insurance back in 1964 to provide for my wife could quit teaching and we could raise a family.
Why an interest in music and then that switch?
Well, I think I became old enough to realize that I need to make a living, and while...
Are you saying music doesn't pay?
Well, it was not what I wanted to do for the salary I was making as a teacher, let's face it. I wanted to have... I didn't want to be rich. I just wanted to have enough money to enjoy the things I wanted to enjoy, travel and music. And so all of my life it's been very fortunate because I could focus on music as an avocation rather than a vocation, and I was able to make a living with a lot of freedom. I recall when I went to work for the company, I wanted to have free time to enjoy my life. I didn't have any aspiration to be rich. I just wanted to have time to enjoy my life.
Okay, so you got into the insurance business and got into other things in life. The Christmas tree farm.
And that's part of that old age thing.
That's fascinating. How did that come about?
Well, I think it's a part of the aging factor. You know, I started with State Farm when I was 27 years old. And by the time I was 32, I think, this is kind of boring. I didn't want to do that necessarily full-time in life, but I wanted to make a living. And so about 1972, I got interested in raising and growing Christmas trees. The Delp Tree Farm in St. John had been an inspiration. Cecil Delp was a pioneer in the business. And I thought, you know, I'll get rich on that. Didn't happen, Victor, but I did establish a Christmas tree farm, and we've had a great time raising a family. So it gave me an outlet for my energy at age 35, I guess. So.
But you enhanced that Christmas tree farm with something else, chamber music.
Well, we built a barn. We built a barn in 1983 to sell Christmas trees.
Right.
That was always going to happen. And then someone said, we'd like to rent the barn for something else. I said, there's no way we're going to do that. No, this is a private home. We'll never rent the barn out. That was in 83, and by the time my kids were going out of school in 88 and off to college, I said, well, maybe we better rent the barn out. So I started doing weddings. I did a lot of weddings. We would do sometimes 4 a weekend. And then, so that was, at that point, it was a nice log barn. Everyone loved the atmosphere of it. It was kind of acoustically correct. And so we started doing weddings until then I met later on my buddy Catherine Concilio. And we started chamber music at the barn. Chamber music at the barn, I had heard this Tokyo String Quartet when I was in college and fell in love with the sound of a string quartet. Now, I'm a music major, a vocalist, and but I'd never heard many string quartets until I was about a junior in college. And I heard the Tokyo, and I was totally blown away by the incredible sound of a string quartet. And so when about 1996, I believe Catherine Concilio had moved back from, as I recall, in the Eastern Conservatory of Music, I can't think what it is, New England Conservatory of Music, I believe. And she went back to Wichita State to teach, and she was playing for one of the weddings of the barn. So after the wedding, I had known her mother, Ann Allen, for many years in musical circle because she's a fine pianist, organist. And so Catherine and I were talking, and she said, Bob, what a great place for a chamber music festival. I said, really? Tell me more. And so at that point, I could still recall the moment she said that and how we started, because she was putting her viola up. And we started that in 96. We started getting a group together. And by 97, we had started chamber music at the barn, summertime at Prairie Pines.
So you brought in these musicians to perform and attracted a crowd.
It was a dark and rainy night, Victor, when one night Catherine Concilio and some of her friends sat in my basement and talked about the summer coming up. It was raining. It was really a rainstorm, and they had to come down in the basement because of the storm. And we conceptualized what would happen, and so we started the first festival in the summer of 97. And interesting is that year, the Wichita Symphony, which is the mother lode of all music in Wichita,
right.
They had doing a soiree thing in the small hall at Century 2 of a small intimate soiree concert of small groups of people. And they decided to quit that at that year. The Providential, the year they quit, we started. And so there was an automatic big response to our chamber music festival at Prairie Pines.
So we have a clip from one of the performances. I'd like for you to set it up.
I think this clip is from the 1913 concert, the Bach double harpsichord.
You mean 2013.
2013, yes, old age, Victor. 2013 concert in the barn of the double harpsichord concerto of Bach. It's fascinating music, and it takes up so many different instrumentations. it's one of the most exciting things we've done. But it happens every summer, something like that.
All right, let's take a look.
Oh, good.
That's beautiful, gorgeous. I enjoyed it. But in addition to the music at the barn, you also have an annual Christmas festival.
We actually started off as a Christmas tree farm in 1973. We started planting trees. In 1980, we opened the farm up for Christmas tree cutting. And so the farm is actually, it's a Christmas tree farm. It's not about the fact that we make a lot of money, Victor, because we really haven't, but the fact we have a lot of good memories. And at Christmas time, we have hundreds of people come out to the farm, and they say, "Oh, Bob, we've been here for so many years. I just met a couple days ago someone who said, I came out here as a young man, and now he's probably 40 years old." So it's the memories that people create, and our theme, our motto is, "Where Christmas memories begin." Someone gave that to me years ago, and I've used it ever since that time. But it is where Christmas memories begin, and it's for a family, it's a rich tradition for us. We love it.
Now, you usually refer to yourself as an old man, and I disagree. But tell
young
us,
at heart, Victor, but
yeah,
old in age.
That's a good thing, to be young at heart.
Yeah, I guess it is.
But tell me, what has been your greatest success in life? And in addition to that, describe your greatest failure.
Well, I think the greatest success I've had in life is having been married for 60 years. 60 years, Victor, and we've raised three children, and we have 4 grandchildren. And if I had anything to be proud of, it's the family that we've created over the many years. Luckiest day of my life was marrying my wife, who was a wonderful lady, and then adopting my first son when I was about 26, 27. My greatest failure, making money, probably. I'm really serious. I suspect I'm not a money maker. I make decisions based on romance more than I do practicality sometimes. But we survived and survived.
I know you've indicated that your goal was to make enough money to do the things you enjoy.
I have no love of money necessarily, but I love the things that money can buy.
Right.
Quietness, security, travel, things for the kids and gifts. I love that. But I don't need a big bank account. I never wanted one.
So we know that you love music, you grow Christmas trees, you operate a State Farm agency, and you are a real estate developer. But really, who is Bob Scott that everybody seems to know?
I hope I'm a decent human being, Victor. I hope I'm a decent human being who will think of the welfare of others and the welfare of our community and the welfare of people. Perhaps one of the most defining things of my life was working in New Jersey at a youth camp when I was 19 years old, off the plains of western Kansas, and I was a junior in college. But probably the most defining time of my life was when I spent that summer working with these kids off the streets of New York City. I thought, this is so simple. I mean, life is easy out in western Kansas. But then one day the camp director needed someone to drive a sick child to New York City. And the camp nurse and I, Lenore Felix, and I drove this young sick man into New York City and took him up to the 16th floor of his apartment to where his folks lived. And I, for the first time, saw what life was like off the farm in western Kansas. And I said, I was so innocent. I said, why don't these folks all move to western Kansas,
What did you see?
I saw poverty. I saw need. I saw people who were hurting because of circumstances beyond their control, and I became much of an activist for a good cause, I think, and I've remained so all of my life. I believe that life is so simple for if you're born rich or if you're born to a family in western Kansas who have no money but have a great family life and a farm, how lucky you are. But if you're not, it's easy for us who have been born that way to think, well, everyone should have what I have. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way.
Was that the most interesting thing that happened, or the most defining moment, or the most exciting moment of your life? Those three things, what are those? What are the answers to those
That
three?
was probably the most defining moment in my life, and perhaps the most interesting thing was when I adopted my first son, our first son. He was 3 weeks old, and at that time I was 27, and Patsy wanted to adopt, and they'd been married for 6 years, and we couldn't have children, we thought, although later on we did, but she wanted to have a child. I didn't really want to very badly. I wanted to go on my theater work. I wanted to be in acting. I wanted to be in theater, and I thought, well, that'll slow me down. But I reluctantly agreed on the basis of my good friend Robert Myers, a minister of a church at the university and also Wichita State teacher, who said, Scotty, do it. I did it, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me.
What about the most exciting thing?
That might have been it. That might have been it, because he changed my life so much for the better.
How?
Looking beyond myself, looking towards what was good for us. It helped me get out of myself, I guess. And if you're an actor or a musician, you're sometimes self-possessed, and all you think is about, did I sing that tune right? Did I make that gesture correctly? And you're always self-analyzing yourself, and I think I learned how to get out of myself and forget about myself and worry about him. And that's a very healthy thing to do for all of us, I think.
So based on your life's experiences, the adoption of your first child, your defining moments, your interests in various things, what philosophy have you formulated for your life, or that you like to offer to others watching right now?
Well, Victor, I think the advantage of a lot of years, I think we have to look out. I think I have to look out. I think it's better to look out and see what you can do to be beneficial to your neighbors, to your community, to the nation, to mankind in general. And be less consumed about your own greed. Because, as just a matter of fact, that's sort of a Christian philosophy that I grew up with a long time ago. I believe that to do the golden rule is do other to others, is the absolute psychologically sound, and it's rewarding and rich.
That is remarkable. But that leads me, Bob, to the word game that I like to play, except we played a little differently this time.
Okay.
When I ask you whatever I think, when I say these words, tell me what you think, the first thing that comes to mind. But I will follow up with another
All right.
question to what you say. So let's begin. Love.
Family.
So is it a feeling or a thought?
It's a feeling, I think. Maybe a thought. Let's look back at that. Perhaps it's more thought, because let's face it, to be married 60 years to me took my wife to have a lot of thought. Because, I'm really kind of a jerk sometimes, Victor. And so I think that you have to have a lot of thought into that feeling, though.
The next word is fearless.
Fearless? Mm-hmm. Well, fearless. I have not been fearless, although I've made some decisions in life that would think I'm a very foolish guy, but in terms of having fear. The fear of failure is always one thing, but I think that if you fear that, you'll never try anything. So I would say be fearless and go and dive into it.
Beautiful.
My wife's beautiful. My children are beautiful. I've always been attracted by nature, by the sunsets and by the flowers and the trees. And so I think that if I'm not a painter, I tried painting one time, it was a total failure. But I think that what we've tried to create at Prairie Pines is a long-term investment in beauty, in trees, the type of trees that live up to 100 years old, in flowers and lotus. I've been possessed by water lotus because they're magnificent flowers. But beauty is all kinds of things.
So is it in the eyes of the beholder?
Probably largely so. Yeah, largely so.
Ugly.
Well, hatred's ugly, and bad attitude is ugly. People who say I'm the only way around here, politics is ugly. Let's face it, on both sides of the fence, it gets very ugly, and that's unfortunate. Right. It always has been, though.
So who defines that ugliness?
Probably the person. I would probably define what's ugly for me. It might be different for ugly for you. And so everyone has their own perception of ugly, I suppose.
Morality.
It's changing. It's changing. Morality is more than just sexual morality. Morality is how you treat people. Morality is how you treat your family. It's a very complex issue, and it probably changes over time to a certain extent. Let's face it, one time in New England, in the Puritan world, we burned heretics for morality's reason, because they were justified, they thought, but we now know that was very unwise. So morality is an issue that's very deep.
Well, let's move on to something that you like, music.
Yeah. Music is redeeming of all mankind. Yeah, it's just so, and I think that if my office has got music on it all the time, now if I'm there, it'll be one type of music. If my secretaries are there, it'll be a different type of music.
All right. And
I recall Sketch Henderson in 1956 talking to Johnny Carson, trumpet player, you know, that wonderful guy. In 1956, Sketch Henderson talked about how bad the music was of today. He said it's really getting to be where you can't understand it, it's bad. But, you know, this has been 60 years ago now, and the music is still around. We still have different musicians. But music is different things to different generations.
Well, you've already answered the follow-up question, which was, what does music mean today? So let's...
Well, it's different. It's different, but we at chamber music, I still believe there is an intrinsic value in the classics of chamber music, or of classical music, how we define that term, of classical music, but I think there's value in the classics and value in what's going on in rap. Absolutely.
So Christmas is the final word.
Oh, yeah. Christmas time is a good time, and we have all the music going on. We have carolers at the farm. We bring out musicians, and but Christmas is a time for all people. There's no politics discussed on the farm, no religion discussed on the farm, in terms just mankind having a good time together.
So what's next for Bob Scott?
Well, I'm hoping my development, Fiddler's Cove, will be a success, so I can pay my bills. We started a project called Fiddler's Cove several years ago.
Right.
About 2000.
That's the real estate development.
That's the real estate development
right.
West of Prairie Pines Christmas Tree Farm. I bought some land back, I don't know, about 1980, I guess it was, 89. And 40 acres. We had 35,000 Christmas trees on it at one time. And then we came along and we started chamber music at the barn. And I got so excited about that project, I did a lot of expenses, spent a lot of money. I shouldn't have spent, my wife said, and she was probably right. But then by the time I realized I would never sell enough concerts to make it worthwhile, I said, well, what do we do next? And so we decided to develop some land. We had 40 acres of land on the west side of Prairie Pines. We So I talked to the developers, and we decided to start. An old student of mine, actually, if had gotten rich in Santa Barbara, California, Bob Short. And so he came back, and we talked, and we decided to develop that 40 acres into high-end homes. And so that started in 2007. Then 2008 hit, Victor. 2008 hit. And
prices went down, right.
Oh, it did. We had 6 homes built by wonderful developers, by builders, and it was a tough time. We survived, but my development called Fiddler's Cove, it's interesting, it's Fiddler's Cove, another musical aspect. It's a beautiful homes. We're about 3/4 built out, so it's going to be coming along. I've not made any money yet, Victor, but I haven't gone bankrupt, and that's exciting.
So what is there that you like to achieve in life that you haven't yet done? Anything else?
Well, I mean, my family and I are going to the top of a mountain in Wyoming in July. When my son died 30 years ago this summer, the one we adopted, he was actually killed in the farm by an electrical bolt from an irrigation pipe from the high lines. But his younger brother Kip and I took a little bronze plaque out to the mountain in Wyoming, where my folks said, "Take me as a young man," Medicine Bow National Forest. We put that plaque up on top of a mountain, a boulder, very top, and it just said Borden Todd Scott, and the date of his birth. And so we go out every few years, and so I was out for the last time 3 years ago with my family, and so we're going to go. I turned a ripe age of 80 this last March, and so we had determined we were going to go back this March, this summer. So we're going out on the 1st of August. As soon as the chain music is over with, the next day, we're going to Wyoming and climb the mountain again, and know I can prove I can still do it. We'll make that happen.
Bob Scott, when I grow up, I want to be just like you.
You're a young man, Victor. You're a young man. You have a lot of years to go.
And thank you so much. And thanks for joining us on this program. And it's been a pleasure having you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And thank you for watching this edition of One on One. Send your questions and comments to oneonone@kpts.org. Also, you can watch all the previous episodes by going to the One on One page at kpts.org. I'm Victor Hogstrom, and I'll be back next week with another interesting Kansas personality. Thanks for watching.
The Alvin and Rosalie Sarachek Trust, supporting arts, history, science, and this program on KPTS.
The preceding program was brought to you by TZ Productions, offering 40 years of media experience.